that. Hey all y'all, and welcome back to my channel. So if throughout this video I end up looking very dewy, it's because for some reason your girl is having like the heatness, hot flash, heat stroke, whateverness, and having two big old bright lights coming on at you doesn't really help that. But today we're going to be having a review, when in reality, when I did my The Fall of Kat Von D video, which was basically a breakdown analysis of kind of her peak performance into what she's become today, including my personal opinions on the matter and kind of how my opinion changed about the brand through that timeline. And several of y'all have been like, you know, you should do that for different brands. You know, give us a timeline, show us the whateverness. And I hadn't really felt, you know, the need or really inspired. And then I thought, you know what? Anastasia Beverly Hills has been pushing out product like nobody's business this year. Their 7th palette of 2019, the Carli Bybel. It is what I am wearing on my eyes today. We're gonna get into this, but before we get into this, I'm gonna do a little bit of a breakdown and kind of like the Kat Von D, show you where we started and when was peak Anastasia, kind of then falling into the whole like rush, push that they've become now, which I honestly feel if we go back and analyze a lot of the really popular brands like Urban Decay, Too Faced, you know, a lot of those like mainstream ones, we're going to see kind of them releasing less, and then the closer we get to 2019, the more product is just being literally regurgitated at us. I got my little timeline right here because your girl was doing some research, because I was like, back in the day I thought Anastasia only released like 1 palette a year, but apparently it was 2, and it's been consistently 2. For a long time Anastasia was known for their single shadows, and then in 2014, only 5 years ago, they released the Rizzy palette, which was in collaboration with a very big influencer, kind of an OG in the beauty community. The palette had 10 shades, 10 or 8, and retailed for $29. So there's also the price gauge that kind of just goes up a little bit as the years go on. Then for that holiday of 2014, they did release their palette, another influencer collaboration with Tamana of Dress Your Face. Now, Tamana has been through her own sort of drama and issues and all that jazz. As much as I don't care for Here for the Tea, she does some great videos on her. And that palette also was retailed for $29. And I feel like what made Anastasia such kind of like a breakout in the palettes is they were really one of the first brands that pioneered that collaboration sort of thing. Because it was smart, because Anastasia was releasing their palettes, which encouraged their buyers to obviously purchase this, because if you looked at the price ratio buying single shadows or buying the palette, it was a better deal for your money. But then they also played into the whole, oh, well, you're supporting these people that you love. You know, it was kind of a new and unique and a very, very well thought out marketing trick to start doing this influencer thing, because it's more than just, oh, look, we released a palette. It's, oh, look, we released a palette with someone you really, really like and you want to support and you feel kind of have a relationship with. Collaborations are not just sold on the makeup in and of itself. They're sold on that relationship that the subscribers have with the person who is collaborating. And ever since then, we have seen collaborations left and right from every kind of brand. Too Faced, I mean, Makeup Revolution, BH Cosmetics, oh my goodness, they collaborate with anything and everyone. Come on, Makeup Revolution, where's my collaboration? Now, in the Tamana and the Rizzy, that was before my time. That was kind of around the area where I was really starting to get into it, but I did miss out on those palettes. Then enter in 2015. In April was the Artist palette. That is a palette that I have. And in all honesty, it was so funny because back in the day with me doing makeup, it was I would just go to Sephora or Ulta and be like, oh, look, that's that's new. I didn't have trend mood. I wasn't checking for anything. You just go to the store, and if it was a new release and you wanted it, you bought it. Then their summer palette of that year was the Self-Made palette. And then for holiday, it was the, oh my goodness, July was World Traveler and holiday was Self-Made. And it is important to know that at this time, palettes that Anastasia released were sort of one of the it releases of the year. Anastasia would release a palette and it would be like the big thing. And I feel like that sort of, we're going to talk about it a little bit more later in the video, but kind of that releasing less is more, because when there's less in the market, there's more of that demand. You know, we're thinking, oh my goodness, Anastasia hasn't released a palette for 5 months. What are they going to come out with? And so there was that hype and that sort of internal excitement when they released something, because it was so far and few and in between. And it is also important to note that these palettes would consistently sell out because there was that demand, and because their palettes had such a beautiful formula, and because they were releasing only a little bit and the releases were very consistent. But also, once again, Anastasia is a brand that no matter what time they release something, their quality was consistent. And so people would purchase these, you know, because it was quality we could rely on. The palettes were usually very beautiful, curated color stories that could work well for every day and also give you a little bit of zhuzh. Anastasia as a brand in the early days were really one of the pioneers in the makeup industry, in their color theory, and kind of just, they were ahead of trends, they were creating trends, they were at the forefront of makeup people wanted and consistently purchased. Something important to note during the 2015 era was also when Anastasia released their single highlighters, that So Hollywood one that everybody went crazy for. And those highlighters are still something to this day that a lot of makeup lovers are like, wow, why did you release those and then take them back? Because it was a formula that people loved. The shade range was really nice, and it was just a product that really gave people what they wanted. Then enter 2016, which I feel is honestly peak Anastasia Beverly Hills just time. They were at the forefront. They were creating beautiful, innovative color stories. They started and created, as we all know, the modern Renaissance, which to this day is a palette that a multitude of people love, use, and recommend. It is one of my top 10 favorite palettes, and it really started this whole like red shades, warm tones as neutrals type thing. It took the red and pink trend and made it more wearable and more acceptable, and ever since then, we've seen every single brand recreate this scheme. And then that same year, 2016, was the year of like coveted sold out palettes. The Mario palette, which both Modern Renaissance and Mario were limited edition. Up to this point, all of Anastasia's released palettes had been limited edition. It was just kind of a thing. You could not buy this palette on Poshmark. I looked when it was limited edition, both of those. You could not find it for less than $150 on Poshmark, Mercari, eBay. This was also when we had that era of being more aware of replicas. There was that whole controversy discussing the, oh, well, if it's a fake one, the magnets in the packaging are going to be like pushed forward and more exposed. Because there was so much supply, so much demand, not a lot of supply, you know, that kind of brought Anastasia to the forefront of replicas because so many people wanted both of these palettes. And I looked and I searched for the longest time, and when it was limited edition, and then Anastasia decided to listen to the masses of their consumers, and the Modern Renaissance became the first permanent edition in the Anastasia Beverly Hills line. I believe it is a palette that has and will stand the test of time because it just has so many wonderful things going for it. It's got the reds, it's got the neutrals, it's wearable, but it's also a little bit out of the box. If you have been on my channel for any amount of time, for as long as I've owned that palette, I always shill reveal it to you guys. And then entering 2017, which is, again, we're riding on that high of Modern Renaissance. We're riding on the high of the Mario palette. You know, Anastasia is this super coveted, sold out, cutting edge, right at the cusp of everything we want in the makeup community marketing. They release their glow kits. Y'all know your girl loves highlighter. These glow kits were something that I feel like we hadn't really seen. Once again, you know, there's so much of this evolving in the community in what's being released, what's being made. Yeah, I feel like there were maybe potentially some highlighter palettes on the market, but since the Anastasia Beverly Hills glow kits have been made, the influx of highlighter palettes being created has probably quadrupled. And I remember explaining to my mom, I mean, she was still like, girl, it's too expensive. But being like, you know, you get these 4 ginormous pans of highlighter for $40, you know, cost breakdown, that's only $10 a highlighter. A high-end highlighter ranges about $30. You're getting 4 for the price of 1. It made a lot of sense, and a lot of people loved them. Glow kits were another thing you could not find secondhand for more than around $75 to $100, because one thing Anastasia did was they released, I believe, the Gleam and they released the Gleam and that Glow, and then subsequently retired them. Anastasia has a very bad habit of having items that they don't necessarily mark as limited edition and then just sort of bring them away from the market. Then they released Sun Dipped, and after that they released Moonchild. We have Aurora, we have Sweets, we have the Nicole Guerrero glow kit. There is a myriad of many reincarnations of the Anastasia glow kit that we have seen, because it was a product that, once again, the quality was something we hadn't seen before. The finish and just the user ability of this product was, once again, kind of pushing on things that we knew existed, but this was pushing the quality and the vision of what the future of makeup was going to be. And once again, with the Moonchild, and not so much the Aurora glow kit, but with the Moonchild, we're like, it's a highlighter palette. You know, Anastasia is on the forefront of that. But it was also these prismatic, iridescent, holographic, you know, colors that then kind of, once again, Anastasia was trend making, not trend following. In like with the Modern Renaissance, suddenly everybody had a holographic, duochrome, shifty, whateverness highlighter palette. I absolutely love Nady from Pop Lux doing the the review of the fake one versus the real one. That's what got me to follow him. He is fantastic. We'll leave that video down below. Worth a watch. Also, 2017 was the release of the Subculture Palette, which was what Anastasia claimed to be the sister, companion, counterpart to the already beloved Modern Renaissance. Now, looking at the color story of the Subculture, it was honestly something I feel like we hadn't really seen. Anastasia was still pushing forward in those color stories that were more unique, much less mainstream, you know, not any Too Faced chocolate bars or Urban Decay Naked palettes or Tarte, they're so not memorable, I forgot their names. The Tartlet palettes, and then Tartlet and Bloom, and then the Toasted. But they were creating these things that were, once again, revolutionary, cutting edge. People were like, ooh, that's something we haven't seen before. That's exciting. But unfortunately, the Subculture suffered from what I would consider inconsistent quality control. I reviewed the palette. I gave it a fairly good review. It is definitely not one for beginners. I have not since tried that palette since it has been reformulated. And this began sort of the start of Anastasia not being 110% honest with its consumers. There was hue and outcry because we all had an Anastasia formula we knew and loved. Yeah, you know, their shadows had, you know, fallout and whatever, but we were willing to deal with that because pigmentation, blendability, wearability, all that jazz. But these shadows, they were pigmented, do not get me wrong, heckin' pigmented, but they didn't blend, and they didn't sit well, and they oxidized, and the fallout was beyond like even more than normal Anastasia fallout. So people started talking, and Anastasia then came out, which, you know, I feel like if you're saying something is a traditional formula and then you have a new formula, it behooves you to say it 1st, they came out and were all like, well, it's a pressed pigment palette. You have to use it like this. I feel like this began the trend of when a palette didn't do well for a brand, well, it's a pressed pigment, you're using it wrong, sort of started. Okay, people were like, all right, it's a pressed pigment, it's not a beginner palette. And then there came that cute little video with that young lady kind of shading everyone, being like, well, you have to use it in this specific way. Why are you coming out with the tutorial and the how-to after the fact of it being released and people complaining? Why don't you come out with the tutorial when it released, tell us it's a pressed pigment, it's not going to be the same formula as the modern Renaissance, which is what we were expecting. Why can't you just be honest about it? Then for holiday, they released probably one of my least favorite Anastasia palettes, just because it's so disjointed. It has some wonderful single shades, but on a whole, it just doesn't really do it for me, and that is the Prism Palette, which sort of suffered from the backlash of Subculture because we had been riding on this Anastasia high, and then we had this screeching breaks with the Subculture, and people were like, do we really want to buy the Prism if now we cannot count on the quality because of what happened with Subculture? And the quality was okay. I wouldn't say it's modern Renaissance level or soft glam, but you know, it really did suffer from that backlash because Anastasia hadn't been honest about the formula in the Subculture, and so when Prism came out, people were like, what the frig? The color story is all over the place. It's just kind of like this crazy mishmash of there's like a bright neon something, like a crease shade, a bunch of weird shimmers, and then people being like, oh, is the quality really all there? This also started the era of the never-ending fuzzy packaging. 2017 also saw us the Nicole Guerrero Glow Kit, which to this day is one of my favorite glow kits, and it was a very coveted, a very sought after. I feel like that's one of the glow kits that got away from people. A beautiful, stunning glow kit, probably one of the best ones they've ever released, which then sort of kind of bolstered Anastasia's popularity, you know, going on into the beginning of 2018. We're like, okay, they do have quality products, you know, this is okay, we're good. 2018, enter Soft Glam, one of my absolute favorite palettes of all time. However, this palette did not go unscathed by the community and the consumers. A lot of people were disappointed in this palette because it seemed sort of like a rehash of a lot of their singles and a lot of their, you know, kind of previous, you know, it was very neutral, it was very whatever. In my opinion, the Soft Glam is the true sister companion palette to the modern Renaissance, but that's just my opinion. Allegedly. But this was another palette that was not instantly welcomed with open arms by the community. It was sort of like, you know, a lot of people were anti-hauling it. They weren't feeling it. They're like, I've already got the colors. If I've got the singles, you know. It was definitely a 50-50 across the board rather than being, yes, everybody wanted it. Then we also had the Sultry palette, sorry, Norvina, which we teased and saw the beautiful purple packaging. And then when it was released, people were kind of like, oh, purple packaging? That ain't a purple palette. And once again, that palette was, you know, met with sort of, you know, people being a lot less, you know, hungry and ready to jump on it. And this is also entering a time when Anastasia palettes aren't selling out anymore, partly due to the fact that they are releasing more, and also due to the fact of kind of the history of suddenly inconsistent quality control, as well as their color theories being a bit more mishmash. And then we had the Sultry palette, which for me was a little bit of a missed opportunity. It is an alright palette. The quality is good. I have a review on that as well. I know it is a lot of people's favorite palette. People who love that neutral bronzy look. It was compared to the Urban Decay Naked Reloaded, I think. Honestly, all the releases start bleeding in together after a while. Like, I thought like some of these were like, wow, that was like last year. I thought that was like 4 years ago. Then enter 2019, which is where we have reached with Anastasia peak saturation. Riviera, their spring palette. people were very excited because from Anastasia, from a big name brand, it was something colorful. There was a little bit of shade being thrown around for a while because people were like, oh, look at this colorful palette, when there were plenty of colorful palettes being created with better color stories, more colors, less money by well-known indie brands. But it did fairly well, but once again, it was met with you know, we still aren't seeing that sort of in 2016 palettes being sold out, items being sold out. People were holding back their money a lot more. Then we had Alyssa Edwards. I reviewed that as well. I think I've reviewed all of these. You know, people saw that it was incorporating, you know, a drag queen into the makeup community. I was all about that. The quality I considered to be a little bit inconsistent, especially for the sort of colors they were using. You know, when you have brights, you need a really good smooth formula, and these were just sort of middle ground for me. And Jackie Aina, another palette. And at this point, we're ducking and we're moving and we're like, because there are palettes being released left and right. We're like, this is a lot. You know, we know that the market is being very oversaturated, but for Anastasia, this is a lot because they've also released loose highlighters. They've released foundation, eye primer, setting powder. 2019, Anastasia is releasing like basically a whole new makeup line within their makeup line. The Jackie Aina palette was good. Did not do, I think, as well as Anastasia would have liked because there are a lot of people who have certain feelings towards Jackie Aina. And then probably a month and a half after that palette release, they were like, boom, Norvina Pro Pigment palette. I was down, I reviewed it, and then not even a month after releasing that, they were like, boom, Pro Pigment Palette Volume 2, Pro Pigment Palette Volume 3. And so we're recovering, we're reeling, you know, I'm, you know, doing my review and everything. There's all kinds, and they're like, boom, Carli Bybel. And it has just reached this absurd level. I bought it partly because, you know, if I'm being honest with myself, I am one of those people that is a collector. Anastasia is one of those things that I have not stopped collecting. Urban Decay Naked palettes, yes. And it's nice. The packaging is absolutely beautiful. There's the brush I never use. Does it have a crap ton of shimmers in it? Yes. Would this palette have been better if it were released in spring of 2020? Yes. For a multitude of reasons. Number one being, this is a very, I feel, spring and very light and lovely and kind of like, you know, that soft spring wedding sort of look. And also because people aren't checking for Anastasia or buying Anastasia's palettes anymore because they're releasing so many. And as consumers, we have the right to vote with our dollars. And Anastasia, although I have heard rumors from some people that they are being purchased by someone new and big and whatever, and so they have to push out a certain amount of products to show a retail upcline, which I'm not sure if that's happening. And then also the whole thing with the Norvina palettes, they're apparently releasing a brand within a brand that is going to appeal to a different demographic. But that being said, part of what made Anastasia so amazing back in the day was the fact that their releases, the 2 palettes a year, consistent timing, consistent quality, revolutionary color stories, beautiful color theories, you know, they really were ahead of the game on what was up and coming as a makeup trend. Whereas now they're just spitting out collaborations. I mean, 3 collaboration palettes in 1 year, 7 palettes in 1 year. I think that's close to 500 or I don't know if I want to go there because that just kind of, you know, because I bought all of them. And it just isn't practical anymore. And these brands, while they're continuing to push and shill and shove everything, we as consumers, we as beauty lovers have sort of started taking steps back and being like, you know, we don't need everything. We're more aware of quality control. We're more aware of, you know, color repeats. We're very more aware of what things seem like a cash grab. We are getting a lot better and not just being blind masses purchasing makeup because it's pretty. And that is really hurting a lot of brands because we're not just buying everything they release left and right. 2019 has really been I feel even from the 2014, what we started with Anastasia, going on to now and here, it's like this super oversaturated. Like I thought things were oversaturated in 2015. Oh my goodness, little old me had no idea 2019 was going to be this just consumed with releases. It's like every other day we've got ColourPop, we've got Anastasia, we've got Too Faced, we've got just every single brand shilling out as much as they can. And some products are good. Some products really stand out. When Too Faced started reaching those monochromatic palettes and they started just kind of, doing them, and then they were like, let's release one every week. Suddenly they seemed a little less inventive. Now, whatever the reason is for Anastasia to be pushing out so much product in 1 year, it is still something that we need to look at and think about and really kind of take stock of, there's also, brand loyalty and things like that. And Anastasia is a brand that I have experienced a lot of, that I really enjoy, that I continue to purchase from. But when you are at this true level of just literally drowning in makeup, you start kind of zoning out, you zone out of ColourPop, you zone out of Anastasia, of Too Faced, and of all these things, because there's just so much to be had. I feel like we have reached this point of quantity over quality for the past few years. And luckily, at least, Anastasia, for the most part, doesn't suffer from that quality dissection. They are pushing out just almost, I would say, an ungodly amount of makeup. I honestly, this is how blinded you become with the makeup. I thought Riviera happened in 2018. When someone told me it was a 2019 release, I was like, girl, it ain't even been a year and I'm ready to just I thought it was 2018. And so for whatever reason, with all of their releasing, I do feel that this palette would have been a beautiful spring palette. Carli Bybel is a gorgeous, wonderful lady. She's got her BH Cosmetic palette, the big one I reviewed and absolutely love. Although the matte to shimmer ratio with this is a little bit, favoring the shimmer. I was still very happy with what I came out with today. I will definitely be reaching for this palette at least to recreate this look. But was it necessary? No. Was it something we wanted or needed? No. Was it well timed? No. Because these things have literally been coming left and right. And it's just so frustrating because as someone who is a review-based channel, I'm trying to, go into other things. But when there is literally so much being released and trying to, keep track of what I want to review, requests from you all and everything like that, when there's just so much being pushed out, it feels like this almost hopeless wading through every single thing and trying to decide, what do I buy? What's going to be, because Anastasia used to be the palette of you passed on it and then it became the palette of the century. And so there's that kind of interfere, although you can look at a palette layout now and be like, yeah, this ain't going to be the palette of the century. Just being honest. So for all of you all interested in the palette, it's nice. It's okay. It is not an Anastasia palette that I would say run out and buy. Honestly, the only Anastasia palette that came out this year that I was like run out and buy was, I think, Riviera. And the Pro Pigment palettes, but the palettes in this format. It's just too much, people. It's just too much all at once, all the time, every single collaboration, every single thing. If we are able to spread out that timeline between releases, like I said, had that palette been released in sort of like a spring and just whatever going on there, I think it would have been much more well received. All right, all y'all, that is sort of just my thoughts on the kind of a small breakdown on the current history of Anastasia. It's amazing how much things have changed even in the small amount of time I've been in the community. Because people, it's only been 5 years from the start of them releasing palettes to now. So going from releasing 2 palettes to releasing 7, that's a big just Yeah, that's too much, too much, too much. For those of you who were able to make it through this entire video, thank you so much. I'm sorry if it didn't. I hope it made at least a little bit of sense for you all. Let me know if you would like me to do more videos like this, kind of talking about different brands and their beginning to where they are now. Because you really can see a trend in the history of some brands, you know, starting out, and then as we go on to now, it's like things have really changed up. Obviously, let me know your opinions down below. I know many of you have been just horrified and aghast with the amount of just stuff that's been being pushed out by Anastasia. A lot of you have said you're not even checking for them. You're like, I'm done, I'm tired, I'm over it. So let me know what you think down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you. And as always, keep it real. Mwah!